a day, I live in a dream. I live in a dream.
All right. Welcome to Only Trying to Help, the podcast where we try to help you be helpful to other people. My name is Kate. I'm feeling a little under the weather today, but for moral support, I've brought in my friend and colleague, Kendelle. And Kendelle, the more that you speak, the less the audience will have to listen to me clear my throat. So for their sake, might you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And I'm really sorry you're not feeling good today, Kate. I am. And I'll try and talk and try and not put all your audience to sleep as well. Hi, everybody. My name is Kendelle Bond. I'll give you a bit of an introduction about myself. I am based in the UK, in Brighton, which is on the south coast. And professionally, I am a behavioural psychologist. And I work one-to-one with people who have lots of mental health conditions, such as anxiety, such as depression, substance misuse, various different complex needs. And I also deliver a lot of supervision and training in things like cognitive behavioural therapy, mindfulness-based therapy, MI, trauma informed practice. And I started out as a midwife, and I always wanted to be a midwife when I was at school. That was my dream, be a midwife. Finally became a midwife, which was amazing. And then I got diagnosed with a long-term health disease, which meant that then I was unsafe really to practice, more for myself than for the women I was working with. And what that meant was I had a choice. I leave midwifery and, don't do anything, or I decide what was the best thing about midwifery and I take that forward. And so I had specialised in midwifery about working with mums and families with addiction. And so I decided to go into psychology and became a behavioural psychologist from there. So that's what I do. I'm the clinical director of the National Centre for Behaviour Change, which sounds very fancy, and it is, but I love it. And I've been doing it now for 16 years. And so me personally, I love animals. Talk to me about animals all day long. Giraffes, dogs and pandas. That's it. You've got me. Penguins are up there too. I love food. Cheese, as you know, cheese is my thing. Cheese and coffee, just happy days. And I absolutely love traveling. And, as of COVID, I was in the clinically extremely vulnerable group in the UK, which meant that I was fully shielding for 2 years. So my first trip will be to Chicago to see the motivational interviewing peeps in October.
And I will be one of them. So
I can't wait. Big cuddles.
How lucky am I? Yeah. Big cuddles, assuming I'm feeling better by then.
Well, and me too. It's always touch and go whether I can ever actually go out because of my health problems. So you have to hold everything lightly. That's my motto.
Yeah, well said. I don't know why we haven't done this sooner, the podcast. Like, you belong on this podcast. Why have you been avoiding us?
Anxiety. That's why.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where you have imposter syndrome. And all of the people that you've interviewed on your podcast, I absolutely have so much respect and, I'm so in awe of that. I never would have thought that I belong on this platform with you, people like yourself, incredibly wise and intelligent. So
stop.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. The part that, everyone's listening right now, but the part they're missing is how we spent 5 minutes on the Zoom cameras playing with wild hair and making each other laugh with just funny hairdos. But let's let them all believe we are just very intelligent, respectable professionals.
Yeah.
And we did not just do funny hairdos in the camera for a little while.
We did not. We absolutely did not do that at all. I'm terrible. I get overexcited sometimes and just do the most ridiculous things during sessions, during training. I'm not adverse to showing my wild hair in training times.
Well, the podcast audience is just going to have to take our word for it that we both had wild hair for a little while. Yeah. But when I asked you, why have you been avoiding us? You said anxiety, and I laughed. That is actually why we ultimately did connect for this podcast. I had decided to dedicate some podcast time to anxiety. And, it's a topic I've been thinking about for a long time. And it's funny, I kept putting it off because I wanted to make sure I could do it well and do it justice. And then I realized the irony that I was so worried about it not being perfect, that I was avoiding doing it. And that's when I had a good laugh at myself and decided to make it happen. You work with people who are living with anxiety. And so you spend a lot of time with people who know a lot about this because they're living it. Yeah. I want you to imagine, though, a lot of folks listening right now are not living with anxiety. They may know people who are, but a lot of our listeners are probably tuning in thinking, oh, yeah, I have a friend who goes through that, or my mom goes through that, or my spouse. And they might be thinking, how do I show up better for this person? Mm-hmm. So I told you, one of the first things I wanted to ask you is like, where do you think a lot of people may have some misconceptions or misunderstandings about anxiety? I wonder if you've given that some thought.
Yeah, I have. And it's a really, really good question. I think the difficulty with anxiety, if you don't experience it, is you hear it from a rational place, and you're hearing irrational language, seeing irrational behaviors, and I'm doing that in quote marks, from a place of rationality and logic. And that mismatch just doesn't make sense to the brain, when it's like, hang on a minute, you're doing this, so you're not going out the house because you're scared of X, Y, and Z, yet that has never happened to you, has never happened in your area, and is never likely to happen to you. And so when we look at it from a rational place, we lose the person who's experiencing anxiety. We've lost them straight away because they are not in a space of rational thinking. They're in a space of fear. And when we're in fear, our critical thinking, our executive function shuts down. And what we're doing is we're starting to have the anxiety brain take over. And so I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
And when we're having basically a conversation between two people speaking a different language, rational and anxiety, there's a lot of miscommunication that takes place. Mm-hmm. And a lot of emotions happen, and a lot of fights kick off, and miscommunication.
Yeah, there's a whole relationship dynamic that ensues. Person A may have some anxiety. Person B thinks, well, person A just needs to chill, right? Yeah. Person A just needs to chill. I'm going to tell person A, you need to chill. Yeah. And then when person A doesn't receive that well, person B is so offended and so annoyed and resentful. Well, I told person A to chill. They didn't chill. So what do you want me to do? And a lot of really interesting relationship dynamics ensue when one person has a fundamental misunderstanding about what is happening. And you're right. Now we're not even communicating clearly.
Absolutely. We're not communicating the same language. We're not communicating emotionally, physically together. And I can give you an example if it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And I think let's use more of the most recent times of COVID to highlight this conversation. So I, as I said, was in the clinically extremely vulnerable group. And the first day I went out into the park with the dog, I was there, and I was very anxious because at the time we didn't know if it was airborne, we didn't know how close people could get. Because of my health disease, all the consultants, if you get COVID, you're going to die. It's really unlikely that we'll be able to keep you alive. really early stages. And so I was in this heightened, hypervigilant, panicky state, trying to enjoy the woodlands. And there's this runner, and I can hear him, because I'm all anxious, I'm all hypervigilant. I can hear him running down the woods behind me. And the person I'm with, we're just chatting, and I'm already not listening to what they're saying because I can hear the footsteps. And so I start to think, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I say to the person that I'm with, they're running towards me. What do I do? What do I do? And they were like, well, just move to the side. And I was like, but I don't want them to go behind. I don't want them to come near me. And we're on this narrow path. And so I'm getting myself all wound up. And in my head, there's loads of thoughts going on, loads of images, of ventilators and the news and headlines. And I turn around to the man who's really at quite a distance. And logically now as well, with hindsight, we know a lot more about COVID. And I said, I'm in the CV group. Would you mind just stepping back, like some crazy lunatic? And he had his headphones on and didn't hear me. And he just went running straight by, sweating and breathing and coughing all over me. And I just absolutely had a meltdown. And the person I was with was going, look, it's all right. Nothing's going to happen from this. Don't worry about it. And I'm going, you don't know how this is going to affect me. And they're going, he was just running, it's not his fault. And I was just, swearing about the guy and felt really violated in my space. And the person's with me going, look, you just need to calm down, Kendelle. Just calm down. Just chill out. And I got so angry. And so I turned all this energy of frustration and anger. And I'm not a shouty person. I'm pretty relaxed. And I really lost my temper. I got very cross and was like, you have no idea how difficult this is for me. And I started crying, and lots of things came out of that. And what really happened when we sat down and spoke about it a few days later, and I apologized profusely, the person I was with was really just saying, I was just trying to make you feel better. I was trying to reassure you. I was trying to tell you things were okay. And it was, look, you're all right. And what I was saying was, you didn't understand that I was utterly petrified for my life in that moment. And I kind of needed you on my side, not to be against me. And when somebody is telling you to minimize your feelings, they're basically saying, what you're telling me isn't the truth. It doesn't matter. I'm not, I'm undermining you, and I'm not with you. Mm-hmm. And when you're frightened for your life, which is what anxiety can make you feel, you don't want to be alone. And that's part of the example that, I don't know if that's helpful just to explain it.
Yeah, I think it is, because, I said a lot of folks who may have some misunderstanding, they're of course well-meaning. They're like your friend who you were with, who was just trying to make things better. And they may think, oh, here's a person who's just a little escalated, who needs to chill out. Yeah. And I will tell them, why don't you chill out? And it is coming from a place of, I care about you and I don't want you to be this way. I want to help you. And yet for the person who's living in a nearly constant state of emergency, what they might be needing more than opposition is a sense of safety and security, which you can get from a friend who says, I understand that you're right now in a state of emergency.
Yes, that's exactly right. Just come into my space, soothe me, help me feel safe. In that moment, that's in the crisis moment. It doesn't mean that in time and in the right way, you can't, as a friend, introduce other ideas, other perspectives. Mm-hmm. But when we're in that crisis stage, there's no rational thinking. Just take it out.
Yeah, I was thinking, you just said, soothe me. And I'll bet there are going to be listeners who find this confusing. They're going to be like, but your friend was trying to soothe you. Yeah. So I think we need to be really clear. Like, it's not soothing when a friend says, relax. That's not soothing.
No.
Calm down. And shaking a person saying, you just need to chill. This is not soothing. Arguing with an anxious person is not soothing. Telling them they're irrational is not soothing. What do you think might be more soothing than all those things?
It's a really good question, isn't it? And everybody is soothed in a different way. And this is why, as well, it's about having those curious conversations that when you're anxious, when you're in your heightened state, tell me what you need. Well, before you're in it, don't ask me while I'm in it, because then I can't tell you anything. I'm just going to scream at you. But tell me what you need. Tell me what would be the most helpful in a crisis and anxiety situation. So first of all, being curious about it. Now, what we tend to know is there are certain things that physiologically can support somebody to move away from the anxiety or to be soothed. And when we're talking about soothed, we're talking about moving away from the survival anxious brain and into that more settled, grounded, calmer, more rational, big picture thinking. And so certain things like, as we know, soothing breathing, putting your hand on your heart, they can help people. Sometimes distractions can help people, but sometimes actually distractions in the end for long-term anxiety can become more harmful, but we'll talk about that in a bit. In the moment, it's usually just make that person feel as connected as possible, support them to have a voice, allow them to be what they need to be in that moment. They're reacting as they need to react. And don't you panic. There's another way of the thing is we tend to start to panic if somebody's anxious in front of us because we're like, well, I don't know what to do and I should fix it. And again, just slow it down. Just try and slow things down. Breathing, walking, drinking water. There's other things that you can do. Put your hand in cold water, put your hand in ice to bring the body out. But everybody's different. And it's supporting that person to explore what's your thing.
The listeners can't see what I did, but you saw me point at you when you said, don't panic. I honestly, I think of all the things you said, that's my favorite because I think a lot of helpers out there, friends and family members, want to believe that they can make another person's anxiety go away.
Yeah.
They want to believe that. And you know what? I get it. That's a nice thought. You want to be that parent who can make your child's anxiety go away. You want to be the spouse who can make your spouse's anxiety go away. I understand the desire to want to fix other people's anxiety. But when we accept that we can't and we just manage ourselves, then we can actually get a lot further. So if I'm out with you, Kendelle, we're walking around and you end up having a lot of anxiety, the thought in my head might be, I can't fix Kendall's anxiety, but I can manage me. That's within my control. And so I'm going to make the conscious effort to not panic, to not escalate this, that if I remain calm, that's probably going to go pretty far here. Even if Kendelle ends up yelling at me or upset with me, if I can remain calm, everybody is much better off. And so sometimes what you can do to be a helpful person is in what you're not doing, like not freaking out.
You're absolutely right. And what's interesting about this is almost the helper is going into an anxious response. They're going into a trauma response. They're going into a response of, I'm seeing your discomfort. That's making me anxious because now I feel like I either have to fix you or I feel like I'm failing. And so when that happens, then I'm going to start trying all of these strategies and I become the anxious person too. And there's this saying about that sometimes help is just the sunny side of control.
Ooh. Oh, I'm going to write this down. Help is the sunny side of control. And
that's it. Sometimes the helper doesn't even realize that this is their anxiety taking over. I'm just trying to help. I was just trying to help you. And actually, this is me not being comfortable in my discomfort, that you're uncomfortable. And knock-on effect happens.
All of it. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's actually what inspired this episode because I had posted on Facebook, I think I want to do some stuff on anxiety. And what inspired that was exactly what you're describing. Happened. A friend of mine called me and said, doctor said my daughter has anxiety. I don't know what to do about my daughter's anxiety. I tried to do this and I tried to do this and I tried to do this and I'm trying to help her, but nothing's working. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so your daughter has anxiety? And all I could think was, friend on the phone, OMG, sure sounds like you're the one with anxiety. And this person was just like spiraling about, what do I do about my daughter's anxiety? And I thought, like, I don't know how to hold a mirror up to your face right now, but just please, like, feel your heart racing. Yes. Do you feel your heart racing? Yeah. And so anyway, to the listeners, if you are that soul who's just so desperately trying to help another person who has anxiety, manage your own.
And be that, I think, yeah, it's manage your own. Notice your own. Just notice because actually often we don't even know what anxiety is. A lot of people will say to me, it's just the way I am, Kendelle. It's just it's who I am. And we in the psychology field, we remind people that our thoughts are not facts. And so when we're working with people but they're still in that space where they believe their thoughts are facts. It's just the way I am. I'm just an angry person. I'm just an anxious person. Whereas actually, if you understand the brain isn't a fixed entity. It can change. It's a muscle. It needs training, just like the rest of our bodies. And it takes work, and it does, but it means that it can change. So, I used to have dreadful panic attacks when I was a teenager. Dreadful panic attacks. And similar situation, my mum had anxiety, my gran had anxiety, we all have anxiety. And I remember thinking at the time, if I have children, I don't want them to have anxiety and I need to change it. And I went to a phenomenal CBT therapist and did 2 years of intensive CBT work. And, touch wood, haven't had an anxiety attack for a long time now. And although I'll still get traits of them, I've never had them like I used to have them. And the point really there is recognizing that it is anxiety and that you can change, but it does take work. And that's also being gentle with people. This isn't just a switch that you can say, well, don't think like that. Just stop thinking like that. Don't be anxious. Just, well, why have you got that irrational phobia about wasps or, bees or buttons? Just get over it. That isn't how the brain works. The brain has, for whatever reason, hooked on to a thought pattern, and it needs to be trained that there's another way.
Yeah. And that it is possible. I think,
Yeah.
I think that hope that you're offering is going to be pretty key, because who wants to listen to a podcast about how dreadful the world is and how we can't really help anybody?
Yeah, and what not to do.
Yeah, that hope is really key. I think we've said a couple of important things. One is that even though there may be nothing you can say to a person right in a moment that's going to cure their anxiety can change. Your brain can change with some training, with some work over time. So that hope is important. Mm-hmm. Also acknowledging that so many of the things we're trying to do to be helpful end up amping up our own anxiety in the moment where we feel like we're failing a person we care about.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder if one of the most helpful things we can do is to say to a person who's going through anxiety, you're still okay with me. Like you're still welcome in my life, even if you have to cancel plans at the last minute, even if you have to sometimes change direction in the park to avoid the runner who's coming. You're still welcome here. You're still okay with me. even if I get it wrong and you let me know that I got it wrong, you're still okay with me. That there's space for you and your anxiety in my life, I think is an incredibly loving thing to say to someone who you care about.
Oh, you're so right. I think that is one of the most powerful and compassionate acts that you can provide anybody that you care about, anybody that you meet, anybody that you love, because when people experience anxiety, it's usually coupled with shame. It's really, and shame is such a toxic, horrible emotion to experience, and it's crippling in many ways. And so people start to withdraw, they start to hide themselves, they start to, whatever. And you're right. If you can just turn around to somebody and say, I love you, I accept you for all that you are. Mm-hmm. And that includes the fact that you have panic attacks and anxiety. And I still want you to keep trying. Mm-hmm. And it goes the same really with, having a health disability. I'm somebody that has to cancel plans last minute because I can become very ill very quickly. And it's taken me years, and I'm still not there yet. There's still a navigation and constant negotiation that I have to do with myself and through therapeutic work as well. But it's very horrible to feel that you're letting people down, and even worse so with the stigma attached to anxiety sometimes. But ultimately, it's an illness, or it can be seen as a mental health condition. It's certainly the brain taking charge and steering that ship for a while. And that can be really frightening. And if your friends can turn around and say, I got you, however you show up, and if you need to leave after 5 minutes, after 2 seconds, if you need to phone me at the door and go, I can't do it, I got you. I'll be here opening the door next time when you are ready.
Yeah. And I don't have to ask questions if you don't want me to. I don't need an explanation.
I don't need to try and fix it.
Yeah, I won't stop inviting you to things unless you want me to stop inviting you. But I think that's a concern for folks who cancel a lot. They might say, I don't want them to stop inviting me. I don't want the invitations to stop just because I have to cancel so often. And I've said to folks, I know you cancel a lot, and I will keep inviting you because I want you to know that you're still valuable, even if you're fighting some fight that I don't know much about. It's okay. I don't even have to know about it. I can like you without knowing all about it. I think this is a much more helpful message than I'm trying to fix you, right? Like when we constantly send the message, well, I tried this and I tried this and I tried this, and there's just nothing that will fix you. That's an inherently shameful message. It's like, there's something wrong with you and I can't get you to be right. And I'm just going to keep trying to fix what's wrong with you. And I think a lot of us don't take the time to consider that there's another option, which is like, I'm not going to fix you. I'm just going to love you. And, there's space for you and whatever else comes along with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, in that, it's also okay to say, hey, if you ever want to have a conversation about options, or, things that I may have heard of that help people, you can always come to me, but I'm going to let you decide whether that's right for you. And you open the door and you say, you're welcome to come in at any point, rather than going, you should go to the doctor, you should do this. Well, why don't you try that? Why don't you try that? My friend did this and that really helped. Because I guarantee you that people with anxiety have thought about not having anxiety.
Sorry, I don't think you're kidding when you say that, but it just strikes me as funny.
I know.
Yeah, that people with anxiety have considered not having it.
Yeah, but on that level, weirdly, well, not weirdly, but it makes sense that the energy that goes into being an anxious person is really frightening if you think about life without it. It's almost like you feel like a balloon that's not anchored.
I often get this sense that people feel like people with anxiety are just doing this to bother me, right? Like, oh, well, she says she's too nervous to go. and they roll their eyes like, can you believe I have to deal with this, Kate? I have to deal with this. And I hear people talk about how inconvenienced they are by other people's anxiety, and how I wish these people would just kind of get themselves together. And, maybe another point for us to make before we wrap up here is just that people don't have anxiety to bother you, right? Like very often folks with anxiety are suffering. But when people say to me, can you believe my daughter is always having anxiety every time we want to go on vacation? I say to them, I'll bet your daughter would prefer not to suffer in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you're spot on. It's reminding ourselves of what's our reaction to somebody else's discomfort. It's reminding ourselves that we struggle with other people's pain and suffering.
Oh.
And that causes our own anxiety. And I think that's a really nice way, to finish, is to recognize that somebody who's in an anxious space, they are acutely aware of how this is influencing their relationships around them, even if it's subconscious or unconscious and they're not there yet. And like you say, it's about not increasing shame. It's about saying, I love you, I'm with you, I support you. And when you're ready to get help, I'm sure you will, or I have faith that you will, and know that help is out there.
I have a friend who has a lot of anxiety, and it comes out in some unpleasant ways sometimes. And I can recall this friend saying to me, why do you still like me, Kate? Why do you even still hang out with me? And this friend is remembering times that they've mistreated me in moments of anxiety. And I've just consistently said to my friend, like, I see you as someone who is battling something. And you deserve a battle buddy. You deserve somebody with you in this battle. And I'm just so grateful and impressed that you haven't given up the fight. That it never occurred to me to stop being your friend. But I have heard that from people who can't believe someone has stayed with them through this. And so, I say that to the audience because, Kendelle, this audience is the friends and family members, right? And to all the friends and family members out there who know someone who deals with anxiety, I'm asking you not to quit on them when they cancel plans on you. They may say things they don't mean sometimes. They might have to stop and sit down and have a cry at a time when you don't really want to stop and sit down and have a cry. But that person isn't doing it to be cruel to you. And probably what that person is letting you know is that they're in a struggle, and anyone in a struggle could use a better friend, not one who says, get yourself together or I'm out of here. Yeah. And, isn't it interesting? My brain goes into different places here, Kate, when you talk about that, because I come at it from many different angles. I come at it from the angle of the person who's experiencing anxiety. And because of the person that you are, and you are so compassionate and loving, and, many of your audience will be the same, we, or want to step into that space. Absolutely. Compassion is key. Compassion is utterly key. There are behaviors that still are not justified. And those behaviors can become abusive or toxic. And somebody might enter into those behaviors through being triggered from anxiety. And we, as people around those individuals, equally need to know what's our boundaries of safety. And when we're going into the anxious response of fawning, so fawning being like, I'm going to take care of you and get you safe so that then I'm safe and put myself in harmful situations. When somebody's in an anxious state and they're starting to behave in an erratic way that is harmful, it's also okay for you to say, I'm just going to step out. You're in a really bad space right now.
and it's actually becoming harmful to me. And I'm just going to step back. But when I come back and you've settled and I've settled, I'm still going to hold you. I'm still going to love you. There's a difference between compassion and justification.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight that it's okay to step away when it's harmful and to step back when you feel that it's appropriate or not.
And I'm so glad that you added that, because I think I gave maybe a too short version of the story. You know, it was when I had stepped back in with this friend that they said, why are you stepping back in? Like, why are you coming back to this? And I said, I stepped back when I needed to, and I'm stepping back in because, you know, I see what you're up against, and I see that you're trying so hard, and I want you to know that, like, you're doing what you need to do.
And that's where your skill set and your wisdom comes in. And often when I'm working with families, it's about really establishing safe boundaries for everybody. Mm-hmm. What are the boundaries for the person who's experiencing anxiety? But what are your boundaries? What's theirs? What's yours? You know, and really highlighting that's theirs, that's yours. It's their duty of care to, or responsibility or choice and sense of autonomy to get help or not get help. Mm-hmm. And it's your autonomy, choice, duty of care to try and keep them safe, like, you know, from big things. If you need to access help, then do critical help. But equally, it's your boundaries to say, okay, I can give you this, but I can't give you that.
Yeah.
I can accept this, I can't accept that. And notice what's yours. I don't know if I explained that very clearly, but hopefully boundaries are key.
Yeah, I think you did. And I think, you know, it's where I think folks need some practice, because they might think, I'm laughing because sometimes it's so funny the way people misinterpret boundaries. They might think they're setting boundaries when they shake a person and say, get yourself together.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no, that's not it. That's not what we mean. And so it's probably more than we can cover in this episode. You know, we're
absolutely.
But you're right. There's a difference between saying calmly, this is what I will accept, and this is what I will not accept, calmly.
Yeah.
Versus, you need to do this because I'm not going to put up with that. That's not calm. That is agitating the whole thing. You are doing more than setting boundaries. You're having a scene.
Yes, you're having a scene and you're trying to control.
Yeah.
And Brené Brown, I think it is, you know, one of my heroes, as she is for a lot of people I know, but she talks about, and I'm going to completely bastardize her right now, but the idea of boundaries is that I can take care of somebody else while also taking care of myself or loving myself. And that's really important. And sometimes when you have somebody who is in an anxious state, all of their energy is going into their anxiety, and then all of your energy goes into their anxiety. And actually, it's just, let's notice where these patterns are existing, and how to just gently, it's all just about, let's just be gentle and take a step out of this and see what's happening and what I need and what they need. Yeah.
I know we could speak for hours on this,
but
I know only you and I would want to listen to this for hours.
It's absolutely true. And you're not very well, so you need to go and rest your throat. Here I am being protective mother role here. The mother's coming out.
That's okay. I do think that's a good idea for me. I'm going to I can't believe this. The American in me is going to say to the Brit in you, I think I'll have some tea.
Wow, you're ill. You're very, very poorly.
Did you just fall out of your chair?
Take me in your arms. I don't want to miss a day without you. Let's stay young forever. There is nothing we can't do. And nothing can break us that day I live in a dream.